We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
The U.S. and Russian presidents came out of their meeting in Helsinki expressing desire for a fresh start between the world's leading nuclear powers and more talk on global challenges.
Meanwhile, at the same conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated his denial of alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. The president even said that Russia would be ready to analyze any findings together with the U.S.
A projectile from the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii struck a boat carrying people watching lava from the 2-month-old eruption, injuring 23.
And many areas in Metro Manila are flooded due to rains.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The U.S. and Russian presidents came out of their meeting in Helsinki expressing desire for a fresh start between the world's leading nuclear powers and more talk on global challenges. This after discussing an array of issues from Syria, Ukraine, and China to trade tariffs and the size of their nuclear arsenals. President Vladimir Putin said there was no longer any reason for tensions between the superpowers. The two leaders met in the Finnish capital Helsinki on Monday. Take a listen.
We carefully analyzed the current status, the present and the future of the Russia-United States relationship, key issues of the global agenda. It's quite clear to everyone that the bilateral relationship are going through a complicated stage, and yet those impediments, the current tension, the tense atmosphere, essentially have no solid reason behind it. The Cold War is a thing of past. The era of acute ideological confrontation of the two countries is a thing of a remote past, is a vestige of the past. The situation of the world changed dramatically.
Earlier, President Trump blamed his own country's past foolishness and stupidity, quote, past foolishness and stupidity for the two powers' hostile relations. At a press conference following the summit, President Trump praised their direct, open, and deeply productive dialogue, and he emphasized the need for continued diplomacy over confrontation.
From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, the United States and Russia were able to maintain a strong dialogue. But our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago. I really believe that. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage, but that would not accomplish anything.
candidate, he mentioned
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the two countries would need to work together to cope with the challenges the world now face. Also, Trump and Putin appear to have come to some kind of arrangement to work together with Israel to support a ceasefire in southern Syria, suggesting that Washington is maybe backing off its demand that Moscow's ally Bashar al-Assad step down. Take a listen.
Well, as far as I know, we favor the continued cooperation in counterterrorism and maintaining cybersecurity. Clearly, we mentioned the regional crisis, for instance, Syria. As far as Syria is concerned, the task of establishing peace and reconciliation in this country could be the first showcase example of the successful joint work of Syria. The south of Syria should be brought to the full compliance with the Treaty of 1974 about the separation of forces, of Israel and Syria. This will bring peace to Golan Heights and bring a more peaceful relationship between Syria and Israel, and also to provide security of the State of Israel.
Now, the two leaders committed to securing Israel's border with Syria in accordance with the 1974 agreement on disengagement between Israel and Syria.
Meanwhile, at the same conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated his denial of alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. The president even said that Russia would be ready to analyze any findings together with the U.S.
Once again, President Trump mentioned the issue of the so-called interference of Russia in the American elections, and I had to reiterate things I said several times, including during our personal contacts, that the Russian state has never interfered and is not going to interfere into internal American affairs, including election process. Any specific material, if such things arise, we are ready to analyze together. For instance, we can analyze them through the joint working group on cybersecurity, the establishment of which we discussed during our previous contacts.
Many U.S. critics had called for the summit's cancellation after new revelations surrounding the alleged election meddling. Last week, U.S. authorities indicated 12 Russian military intelligence officers for alleged interference in the 2016 presidential vote. Asked about the Russian meddling, this is what both leaders said.
Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping, because we have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore so far that I... But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. The people involved, some perhaps told mis-stories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lie.
As to who is to be believed and to who is not to be believed, you can trust no one if you take this. Where did you get this idea that President Trump trusts me or I trust him. He defends the interests of the United States of America, and I do defend the interests of the Russian Federation. We do have interests that are common. We are looking for points of contact. There are issues where our postures diverge, and we are looking for ways to reconcile our differences, how to make our effort more meaningful. We should not proceed from the immediate political interests that guide certain political powers in our countries. We should be guided by facts. Could you name a single fact that would definitively prove the collusion? This is utter nonsense. Just like the President recently mentioned. Yes, the public at large in the United States had a certain perceived opinion of the candidates during the campaign, but there's nothing particularly extraordinary about it. That's a usual thing. President Trump, when he was a candidate, he mentioned the need to restore the Russia-US relationship, and it's clear that a certain part of American society felt sympathetic about it, and different people could express their sympathy in different ways. But isn't that natural? Isn't it natural to be sympathetic towards a person who is willing to restore the relationship with our country, who wants to work with us? We heard the accusations about the Concord country. Well, as far as I know, this company hired American lawyers, and the accusations doesn't have a fighting chance in the American courts. So there's no evidence when it comes to the actual facts. So we have to be guided by facts and not by rumors. Now, let's get back to the issue of this 12 alleged...
Meanwhile, President Trump returned late Monday from his European tour to face ire in Washington, where U.S. intelligence officials and senior Republicans were denouncing the president as, quote, shameful and disgraceful after he refused to challenge Russian leader Vladimir Putin over interference in American elections. Senator John McCain called the press conference, quote, one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. The Arizona Republican said the summit with Putin in Helsinki was, quote, a tragic mistake, adding Trump made a conscious choice to defend a tyrant.
In the entire history of our country, Americans have never seen a president of the United States support an adversary the way President Trump has supported President Putin. For the President of the United States to side with President Putin against American law enforcement, American defense officials, American intelligence agencies, is thoughtless, it's dangerous, it's weak. The President is putting himself over our country, starting with the President's trip to NATO, ending with his shameful performance at today's press conference. President Trump has strengthened our adversaries while weakening our defenses and those of our allies. What could possibly cause President Trump to put the interests of Russia over those of the United States? Millions of Americans will continue to wonder if the only possible explanation for this dangerous behavior is the possibility that President Putin holds damaging information over President Trump.
Meanwhile, senior expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, Jeffrey Rathke, says President Trump showed deference and lack of resolve toward President Putin, and that could raise doubts about the reliability of the United States.
The president was deferential toward Vladimir Putin. He was timid. He did not push back against any of Russia's actions abroad or at home that have caused so much difficulty in U.S. eyes for many years. Even though American policy may not have changed today, as far as we know right now, what has changed, I think, is the vision of America's confidence, its ability to stand up to its adversaries when needed, and that, I think, will raise doubts about the reliability of the United States as an ally if a crisis should occur. President Putin offered some sort of bizarre joint investigation, which Donald Trump said was a great idea. these kinds of rhetorical outbursts and accepting the other side's position without any questioning of it is really shocking. Trump had
Monday's meeting was perhaps the most genial. President Putin are fresh off hosting the World Cup, presented President Trump a soccer ball. Take a look.
President Trump has just mentioned that we've successfully concluded the World Football Cup. Speaking of the football, actually, Mr. President, I'll give this ball to you, and now the ball is in your court. All the more that the United States will host the World Cup in 2026.
Thank you very much. We do host it, and we hope we do as good a job. That's very nice. That will go to my son Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go.
The final question from the United States will go to Jonathan Lemire from the AP.
In other news, a British caver who helped rescue 12 boys from a Thai cave said he may take legal action against Elon Musk after the entrepreneur called him a pedo in comments that sent Tesla shares tumbling. Tesla CEO Musk launched the extraordinary tirade against Vernon Ainsworth without providing any justification or explanation after the cave expert slammed his offer of a miniature submarine to extract the footballers from the Tam Luang cave as a PR stunt. The Wild Boars team were rescued last week by an international team of divers through a narrow network of twisting flooded tunnels. Ainsworth, who provided mapping knowledge of the cave to rescuers, said Musk's prototype would have had absolutely no chance of working. Musk responded Sunday in a bizarre series of tweets referring to Ainsworth without using his name as pedo guy. Pedo is short for pedophile. The entrepreneur doubled down on his claim, tweeting from his official account to more than 22 million followers. Betcha, a signed dollar, it's true. Musk later deleted the tweets and did not immediately respond to a request for a comment through Tesla. Ainsworth said on Monday he had not reviewed the tweets in full and had only heard about them, but asked if he would take legal action against Musk over the allegation. This is what he said.
You know, to be honest, it's a bruised ego. Someone just...
I can't put words, to what I feel about the guy, but it's not finished. Not finished by a long way.
When you say it's not finished, what do you mean by that?
Well, I have to take advice on that. I haven't seen the Twitter response yet, but people have told me what's been going out there, and people around the world need to know what this guy is really like.
After everything you've done to save those children, your feelings must be hurt.
Well, not hurt, no, not hurt.
Water off a duck's back?
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Health is our most
projectile from the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii struck a boat carrying people watching lava from the 2-month-old eruption, injuring 23, the fire department said. 13 of them required hospitalization and the rest were treated at a harbor when the boat engaged in a lava tour returned to the Big Island, also known as Hawaii. The lava flowing into the Pacific is a specific site producing foggy haze known in Hawaii as laze. One woman was in serious condition with a fractured femur. The total number of people on the boat was not immediately known, the Hawaii County Fire Department said. In the early morning incident, a lava bomb punctured the roof of the boat and damaged a railing. The department said it gave no further details. The eruption has destroyed hundreds of homes since it began on May 3. Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes and one of 5 on the island. One of the most active fissures, number 8, continues to erupt, and its lava has formed a small island a few meters from the coast, according to the United States Geological Survey. The USGS says it is very likely that it is part of the flow of Fissure 8 that is entering the ocean.
The Philippine National Police deployed its disaster response units to augment local groups in handling public emergencies arising from torrential rains caused by the southwest monsoon. In a statement, PNP Public Information Office Chief Senior Superintendent Benigno Durana Jr. said the PNP activated its national headquarters Disaster Incident Management Task Group, an updated and enhanced plan of action of the police force on disaster preparedness and response engagement in support to other concerned agencies. Earlier, Malacanang suspended work in the executive branch and classes at all levels in public schools in Metro Manila beginning 1 p.m. due to incessant monsoon rains, even as Tropical Depression Henry moves away.
Ito kasi ang talagang trabaho namin, magtanggal ng mga bara sa mga lansangan upang mapabilis yung pagbaba ng tubig baha. Tulungan nyo na lang kami para siguro yung pagtatapon ng basura, kasi yun yung unang nagiging isa sa mga faktor na makakapagdulot ng pagbaha.
Henry has intensified into a tropical storm and is about to exit the country according to the 11 a.m. weather bulletin of Pag-asa. The Interagency Council on Traffic earlier said they will provide transportation to ferry stranded commuters in various parts of Metro Manila. The Philippine Coast Guard trucks will be dispatched along the LRT station of R. Papa to Pedro Hill through Taft Avenue. 2 military trucks from the Joint Task Force National Capital Region in Mandaluyong Circle going to EDSA, and 4 military trucks from Batasan to Fairview.
The Philippines and Malaysia have both pledged to work closely together bilaterally and at the ASEAN level to achieve shared aspirations of peace, progress, and security, Malacanang said. Malacanang made this statement after Philippine President Rodrigo R. Duterte and newly elected Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad held a formal meeting in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The meeting of the two leaders took place a day after they watched together Filipino boxing icon Manny Pacquiao's boxing match versus Argentina's Lucas Matisse in July 15. Meanwhile, Duterte renewed his commitment to further strengthen defense and security cooperation at the bilateral and regional level. He also emphasized the need to address terrorism and violent extremism in the region and transnational crimes such as piracy and armed robbery at sea and the illegal drug trade. Duterte also thanked Mahathir for the sustained support of the Malaysian government to the quest for just and lasting peace and development in Mindanao and for taking care of Filipino workers in Malaysia.
To the U.S. now, a federal judge in San Diego issued an order barring officials from deporting newly reunited immigrant families for up to 1 week. District Judge Dana Sabra was responding to papers filed by the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, expressing concern that the government planned to carry out quick deportations. Attorneys said newly reunited families should be given time to talk through whether they plan to seek asylum and mull over the possible ramifications for both the parents and the children. Sabra's order stays in place through July 23, giving the federal government 1 week to respond to the ACLU's concerns. Sabra earlier gave officials a July 26 deadline to return children over age 5 who were separated from their families at the border with Mexico. The estimated number of children separated at the border under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy has fluctuated, but as many as 3,000 children are believed to have been affected.
Humanitarian needs are enormous in Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, where the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has reported accounts of barbaric violence. In all, 350,000 people are estimated to have fled months of ethnic clashes between the Hema and Lendu groups in the eastern part of the country. UNHCR staff have obtained access to Ituri region, where people are now returning only to find their villages and homes reduced to ash. In Geneva, UNHCR repeated the testimony of one 59-year-old woman who described how people are getting chopped in pieces. To address needs, the agency has provided emergency shelter kits and scaled up social cohesion programs among different ethnic groups. Here's UNHCR spokesperson Charlie Yaxley.
In all, around 350,000 people are estimated to have fled the violence, and those who have returned so far are in many cases finding their villages and homes have been reduced to ash, making them displaced again. Testimony from another person at a displacement site, a 59-year-old woman. In our neighborhood, the assailants arrived during the night and killed our neighbors. 7 people at once, they were living in the same house. We immediately fled during the night. We slept in a warehouse and waited for a car to take us to Bunia, and we spent 3 days until we were allowed to leave. Sometimes people go to the field and find dead bodies with some parts cut out. People are getting chopped in pieces. This is a very resource poor part of the world anyway. The prospects are incredibly slim. With the humanitarian funding really lacking, these people are being forgotten and left to fend for themselves.
The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
garden. A world that brings you back to that natural, carefree feeling of joy and happiness. A place where art becomes your song to strengthen bonds. Creating your moments, kindling your passion. Worth reliving over and over. A world that recaptures the value of life. Breathe. This is your world, your life, your garden.
Welcome back. The latest update to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, World Economic Outlook sees a continued strengthening global growth environment, but noted that the balance of risk is turning negative. In the latest World Economic Outlook update, the IMF continues to project global growth rates of just about 3.9% for both this year and next, but judged that the risk of worse outcomes has increased, even for the near term.
The United States has initiated trade actions affecting a broad group of countries and faces retaliation or retaliatory threats from China, the European Union, its NAFTA partners, and Japan, among others. Our modeling suggests that if current trade policy threats are realized and business confidence falls as a result, global output could be about 0.5% below current projections by 2020. That's a half a percentage point. Broad group of countries and faces retaliation.
He also stressed that the model was looking at worst-case scenarios and that it was difficult to predict how the politics would eventually play out. But he did say that avoiding a conflict is the best course.
Positive and durable response to trade tensions would be negotiations with a broad range of trade partners that open up China even more, especially to imports. The tragedy of the current set of tensions is that it risks creating a very bad outcome compared to what we could achieve if countries would, using multilateral mechanisms, including the WTO, think about where are the weaknesses that have prevented them from addressing the tensions and how they could repair those.
Ostenfeld said U.S. growth will begin to slow from 2.9% this year to 2.7% in 2019 as the effects of tax cuts wear off. The report notes financial tightening could also be triggered by higher inflation readings in the U.S., where unemployment is below 4%. But markets are pricing in a much shallower path of interest rate increases than the one in the projections of the Federal Open Market Committee. India remains the fastest growing major world economy, although its pace of growth is slowing from earlier projections, while China is holding steady at 6.6% projected growth this year. Growth projections have been revised down for Argentina, Brazil, and India, while the 2019 outlook for some oil exporters has strengthened. The IMF continues to recommend that countries take advantage of the current buoyant economic situation to shore up their fiscal positions and prepare for the next downturn whenever that inevitably hits.
It is urgent to address the underlying trends through equity and growth-friendly policies while assuring that macroeconomic tools are available to fight the next economic slowdown. Otherwise, the political future will only darken.
Immigration outflows from the developing world are part of those politics. He said that stronger and more stable African and Latin American economies are part of the solution.
Overall growth in sub-Saharan Africa will exceed that of population over the next couple of years, allowing per capita incomes to rise in many countries. But despite some recovery in commodity prices, growth will still fall short of the levels seen during the commodity boom of the 2000s. Adverse developments in Africa, civil strife, or weather-related shocks, for example, could intensify outward migration pressures, especially toward Europe.
Japan and the EU signed a sweeping free trade deal Tuesday, saying they were sending a clear message against protectionism as Washington puts up barriers and threatens a trade war. According to the European Commission, the EU-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, or EPA, is the largest trade deal ever negotiated by the EU and will create a trade zone covering 600 million people and nearly a third of global GDP. It also provides a stark counterpoint to U.S. President Donald Trump's aggressive America First protectionism, which has seen Washington impose trade tariffs on allies and rivals alike. Abe met with European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker and European Council President Donald Tusk in Tokyo on Tuesday to sign the EPA or EPA at the 25th EU-Japan Summit. The agreement was supposed to have been signed during an EU-Japan summit in Brussels last Wednesday, but the meeting was cancelled by Abe due to the recent flooding disaster in Japan.
I am proud that today we are taking our strategic partnership to a new level with two landmark agreements between the European Union and Japan, the Strategic Partnership Agreement and the Economic Partnership Agreement. We are putting in place the largest bilateral trade deal ever. This is an act of enormous strategic importance for the rules-based international order at a time when some are questioning this order. We are sending a clear message that we stand together against protectionism.
The signing of the EPA clearly demonstrates to the world unwavering political will of Japan and the EU as flag bearers of free trade to lead the world in the midst of spreading protectionism. With the Japan-EU EPA, one of the largest advanced economic areas in the world will emerge, covering approximately 600 million people in population and accounting for 30% or $21 trillion worth of global GDP. This will create a free and fair economic framework with high standards befitting to the 21st century and will become a new engine of Abenomics, bringing about huge opportunities, especially to those in the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sector, as well as micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises of Japan.
The deal requires Japan to remove tariffs on 94% of products imported from the EU, while the bloc must end levies on 99% of Japanese goods. EU agricultural exports are expected to experience a boost from the EPA or EPA as Japanese tariffs on cheese, wine, and pork will be eliminated. According to the Commission, exports of processed foods could increase by up to 180%. The Thunen Institute, a German agriculture think tank, said it expects a heavy increase in pork and poultry exports from the EU to Japan. The EPA, or EPA, will also open the Japanese market for more EU-based services and give EU developers access to Japanese public infrastructure projects such as railroads. The EU estimates that 600,000 jobs in Europe are related to trade with Japan.
In other business news, Tesla shares stumbled as Chief Executive Elon Musk faced criticism over a public spat with a British diver who worked on the Thai soccer team rescue. Shares of the electric car maker were down 3.5% in late morning trade at $307.82 on news that Musk could face a libel suit over the episode. Musk attacked British diver Vern Unsworth, who had dismissed the Tesla chief's efforts to help the rescue mission for the 12 boys as a PR stunt in a widely seen interview on CNN. Musk, without providing any justification or explanation, referred to Unsworth as, quote, pedo guy in a since-deleted tweet on Sunday, pedo short for pedophile. Unsworth said he had not reviewed the tweets in full and had only heard about them, but asked if he would take legal action against Musk over the allegation. Unsworth said, if it's what I think it is, yes.
When you say it's not...
Well, I'll have to take advice on that. I haven't seen the Twitter response yet, but people have told me what's been going out there. And people around the world need to know what this guy is really like.
Unsworth had earlier said the mini-sub built by Mr. Musk's team and flown to Thailand before being rejected as inappropriate for the rescue mission by Thai officials would have had absolutely no chance of working. Elon Musk, who regularly takes on journalists and other critics on Twitter, tweeted a response to Mr. Unsworth without using his name but calling him a British expat guy who lives in Thailand. And he said he would make a video showing the mini-sub making it deep inside the cave, no problemo, adding, sorry, pedo guy, you really did ask for it.
British Prime Minister Theresa May avoided defeat but lost another minister Monday in a key parliamentary vote over Brexit after bowing to pressure from hardline Eurosceptics in her ruling Conservative Party.
Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 57. The noes to the left, 53.
Thank you. The ayes to the right, 57. The noes to the left, 53. The ayes have it, and look!
May agreed to 2 amendments to legislation detailing Britain's future customs regime tabled by Jacob Rees-Mogg and other hardline Brexiteer MPs that critics said stymie her own favored plans as she avoided a large-scale rebellion from her backbenchers. But Gado Bebb, a junior minister in the Defense Department, resigned to vote against one of the changes, the latest in a string of departures from her embattled minority government. The trade bill gives the government the power to build new trade relations or relationships around the world after the UK leaves the EU, and MPs who support staying in the EU's customs union are seeking to change its wording. Critics said the amendments to the customs bill laid down by Eurosceptics on Monday would undermine the UK's recently announced negotiating position. But Downing Street, which agreed earlier to accept the 4 amendments, said they were consistent with the white paper where it sets out how it wants to trade with the EU in years to come.
This will deliver over £2 billion.
Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Theresa May announced a new £2.0 billion program with Italy's Leonardo to design a new generation fighter jet as Britain aims to project aerospace prowess into its post-Brexit future, opening the Farnborough Fair or Farnborough Air Show. The Prime Minister defended her Brexit plan. Take a look.
We know from our discussions with you and other industries how friction at the border would not just jeopardise the uniquely integrated supply chains and just-in-time processes on which millions of jobs and livelihoods depend, but how divergence in regulations could result in complex and expensive multiple tests for different markets. The frictionless free trade of goods, an independent trade policy, the avoidance of a hard border between Northern Ireland and between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, These are conditions we seek. To do anything else risks the integrity of the United Kingdom, reneges on the Belfast Agreement, and simply will not deliver for Britain as a global trading nation.
May also announced a new $2 billion or £2 billion program with Italy's Leonardo to design a new generation fighter jet following speculation that Brexit could disrupt cooperation in this field. Take a look.
So today I can announce that the government will join with BAE Systems, Leonardo, MBDA and Rolls-Royce to fund the next phase of the Future Combat Air System Technology Initiative through a groundbreaking partnership known as Team Tempest. This will deliver over £2 billion of investment up to 2025 and help secure the long-term future of our combat air industry as we lay the groundwork for the Typhoon successor programme. Nowhere do we recognise that terrific history more this year.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Health is our most
TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Sabi, rated SPG, maselan!
Itan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
Crowds of fans line the Champs-Élysées in central Paris to give the French World Cup winners a hero's welcome. French President Emmanuel Macron also celebrated with the team.
Meanwhile, Paris has paid tribute to France's World Cup winning champions by temporarily renaming 6 of the city's metro stations in honor of their achievement. Take a look.
Je trouve que c'est une très bonne idée, c'est amusant, c'est voilà, c'est bon enfant et c'est rigolo, quoi. Ça change du métro, boulot dodo.
Je travaille ici et je me suis dit tiens, ils ont changé le nom de la station, j'ai réalisé que c'était Loris.
The UP singing ambassador was in Europe, and our EBC correspondent in Europe was able to catch up with them. Just to recall, the University of the Philippines Singing Ambassadors, or UPSA, under the baton of founder and conductor Edgardo Manguiat and Barcelona-based Filipino children's choir Kudyapi, under musical director Arnel La Morena German won, or Arnel La Morena Herman won over choirs from Germany, Sweden, and the United States. Here's Malu Francisco.
The multi-awarded UP Singing Ambassadors are currently on a tour here in Europe for 3 months. I was able to catch up with the founder-conductor, Dr. Ed Manguiat in Bonn, Germany. I asked him what the highlights are in this year's tour of Europe with the UP Singing Ambassadors.
This time we're participating and representing our country in 4 major competitions in Europe. We just finished and won the grand prize at the Berlin Sing Berlin Festival, and 2 first prizes and the grand prize.
University of
We're joining the competitions in Torrevieja, Spain, and we'll be joining the Habanera Polyphonica in Torrevieja, Spain, and then we're going to Florence, and then we're going to, the highlight of our tour is participation and representing our country in Arezzo, Italy, considered the most prestigious of the top 6 choir competitions in the world.
While in Bonn, Germany, where I caught up with Dr. Manguiat, he and some members of his group attended the Iglesia Ni Cristo worship service. Even here, he and his group continue to inspire others through music. As part of their outreach program, they rendered songs to the great delight of the audience. Besides singing, the University of the Philippines Singing Ambassadors also generously offered some voice training.
And it is really a joy and really a fulfillment to meet our kababayans here, to meet new friends, because this is our own little way of ambassadoring through music and somehow in our own little way help uplift the image of our country. Of course, we know that the European community are very fond of music, and when they see that their friends are have high musicality, nag-iiba po ang tingin sa atin.
From Germany, the UP Singing Ambassadors will proceed to Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Belgium, and France. To the whole group, we send you our wishes and we wish you more success. Right here in Bonn, Germany, Marilu Francisco for Eagle News, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Malu.
Thank you, Malu. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Alma Angeles, and we're one with 25.